appreciate you being here in the middle of Sydney. I'm joined with the Minister for Police, the Police Commissioner and the Assistant Commissioner, Mark Walton. We're here to speak about a big breakthrough in Operation Pearl in New South Wales. The New South Wales Police's operation to catch individuals who are alleged to have committed offences, hate crimes across New South Wales in recent months. A man has been charged after an alleged attempt to set a synagogue on fire in Newtown earlier last month. He's been refused bail to appear in Downing Centre Local Court on the 22nd of January, and that makes him the 9th person to be charged as a result of the excellent police work from Operation Pearl. As I said yesterday, that's a total of 9 people, 4 men charged in relation to the setting on fire and vandalism of businesses in Bondi in October 2024. 3 people have been charged with 10 vehicle and building offences in Wallara of November of last year, and just yesterday a 34-year-old woman was charged in relation to being accessory to the destruction of vehicles and malicious damage, again in Wallara of last year. Now, this is excellent police work from New South Wales detectives and New South Wales Police. We made it very clear yesterday and over the last few months that the government and the police would put resources in place to catch people who are responsible for committing hate crimes on Sydney streets. It will not be tolerated. We want to make sure that in all circumstances, individuals, as part of a group or acting individually, who go out and commit these offences will be met with the full force of the law. And as the Commissioner for Police revealed yesterday, Operation Pearl will have the number of detectives increased to 40 full-time detectives working around the clock to ensure that perpetrators of these hate crimes, this violence on Sydney streets, will be met with the full force of the law. The New South Wales Government is also pursuing changes to the law, whether it's sentences or hate speech laws in New South Wales. We will leave no stone unturned in combating rampant anti-Semitism and violence in our community. It will never be tolerated. I want to make it absolutely clear that civic leaders and the leaders of New South Wales stand united against this kind of fear and intimidation, this deliberate attempt to strike terror into the hearts of people that live in this state. And together as a community, we will overcome it. If you are responsible for these criminal activities, you can expect police to be visiting you soon. This is not the end of these arrests. Operation Pearl is just getting started. I'll go to the Minister for Police.
Thank you very much, Premier. Yes, a significant breakthrough last night by excellent police work from the New South Wales Police led to the arrest of a 33-year-old man from Pyrmont. That, of course, is in relation to the arson attempt and the graffiti at the synagogue in Newtown. Police said this work has to be done methodically. A body of evidence needs to be brought together so that we get a prosecution, and that's exactly what has happened. There's more work to do, but if you have committed or you are thinking about committing one of these offences, expect a knock on your door. It may not be today, it may not be tomorrow, but let me tell you, it will come. The police have bolstered their resources when it comes to Strike Force Pearl. There are an extra 20 detectives now, that is 40 detectives in Strike Force Pearl and 4 analysts. Police are taking this extremely seriously. In addition to that, proactive policing right across areas where we have large Jewish communities and places of significance. We have increased that proactive policing. You can expect to see police in these communities. In fact, the Jewish community have told me that they are seeing a large presence. They are there. They are watching you, and you will be caught if you intend to commit one of these heinous crimes. I'll hand you over now to the Police Commissioner.
Thank you, Minister. As has been said, overnight Strike Force Pearl detectives have arrested a 33-year-old man, and he has been charged with attempting to set fire to a synagogue in Newtown earlier this month. That man will appear at court today. A second man is still yet to be arrested, but we expect to make an arrest shortly, and he will also be before the court. The investigation remains ongoing for that matter and all other matters that have been reported to police. There is good progress on the attack on the synagogue in Alawa, very strong leads for investigators in that one, as well as the daycare fire at Maroubra yesterday. There are very good lines of inquiry. All these matters are being dealt with seriously, and we will continue pursuing all lines of inquiry and investigate these matters to their fullest to identify the offenders and bring them before the court. As has been mentioned, we have bolstered Strike Force Pearl, 40 detectives from State Crime Command, CT Command and local detectives, as well as 4 intelligence analysts to make sure that no stone is unturned. We will track down these people, pursuing every line of inquiry. Every investigative lead will be pursued. So it's still important that members of the community call Crime Stoppers with information. They can call anonymously. We are still seeking public assistance, but let me say it again, we have very strong leads, and I'm sure we will see these matters resolved. As has been said also, this may not be today or tomorrow. We will continue this investigation as long as is necessary. And happy to take questions. As has been said, this is the 9th arrest. Overnight, this is the 9th arrest by Strike Force Pearl. Arrests have been made for the arson attempts and arson in Bondi in October, the attacks in Wallara in November, the attacks in December. We are making arrests and we will continue to make arrests.
Commissioner, do police know if they know what this person's alleged motivation is? Is there an ideological element to this? And is there any evidence that he knows
No. What we deal with is fact, and the evidence that we have at the moment is about the acts committed, and those people will be before the court on the evidence we have. The evidence of motive is not clearly established, but we will continue to work on it. And that's the point I want to make. Whilst we have people before the court, the matters are still ongoing and still under investigation. We can't rule out anything, and we need to keep an open mind, which we are doing.
On that point, Commissioner, how, noting, yeah, as you said, one of the calls today, one of the alleged offenders, one of the calls yesterday, given the AFP statement late yesterday about this potential bomb experience, how big of a line of inquiry, how much resources from Strike Pearls go into that line of inquiry here?
Certainly we will work with our national counterparts. I've got a conference with my Policing Commissioner colleagues this afternoon to discuss these very matters. But if the AFP and other jurisdictions have information relevant to our investigations, then we need to have that information.
On that point, Commissioner, sorry, did you know about, had you been told by the AFP before issuing their statement yesterday about their concerns with foreign interference? Was that the first you heard of them?
I won't go into any specifics, but certainly, as I said, really we all have to keep an open mind, and we shouldn't rule out anything, but we also shouldn't make that our only line of inquiry. So certainly they're all aspects under consideration.
As the investigation continues, obviously we've seen this man, like the other people who've been charged, they've been issued charges of vandalism and property damage offences. Can we expect any federal charges or perhaps terrorism charges as the investigation progresses?
Well, as I said, these are all matters still under investigation. The charges that bring them before the court carry very heavy penalties alone. But if it is appropriate at a point in time that these charges are amended to more serious or other charges, then that will be considered. But it will be based on the evidence.
Why don't they currently meet the threshold of terrorism charges?
I've talked to this before about whether the threshold is met. I've also said before, terrorism is actually a crime. What we're investigating here is a crime. These people are before the court for crimes. So, you know, let's face it, they are being charged with a crime that carries 10 years, in some cases more.
Surely it's still cold comfort for the Jewish community
As
that they can hit with vandalism.
I can understand that. I can understand the fear in communities around this. we will consider what is necessary based on the evidence and facts before us.
In terms of, you talk about proactive policing, all these incidents seem to be happening and no one is arrested within a day. I understand it's a police method that is extensive in detail, but why is it that none of these attacks have seemed to have been thwarted? And can you tell us of ones that have been thwarted that you were able to stop?
Well, we don't know what crimes we've prevented by us simply being out in that community patrolling 24/7. We may never know that. But it is difficult in the streets of Sydney, in the streets of New South Wales, that every road, every town, every suburb, to be every place at every time. And we don't know to what extent we may prevent a crime, simply by our overt patrolling and sometimes our undercover officers. We've bolstered our patrols to include our police helicopter police assets in the sky. So we continue to do that, and we continue to throw our resources at it, to be out in our communities. Again, our community are our eyes and ears, and we rely on information from the community. But will we be Johnny on the spot and arrest someone in the act? Highly unlikely. But let me say though, that we will act on the evidence and the information, and the arrest this morning is 11 days on from that incident, with very, very little information other than a very hazy CCTV image, and we've worked backwards from that tirelessly, methodically, and now we have someone before the court and a second offender we're currently searching for.
Can I answer that too, just before we get further questions? Look, I appreciate there's frustration around some of these offences. They're very serious and they've struck real fear and terror in the community. But the question was asked, why don't police arrest an individual the same day? I mean, in some cases, these are sophisticated actors. New South Wales Police are putting enormous resources into it. And as a layperson, I'm not a police officer, I've got enormous confidence that the expertise, the experience of New South Wales Police will track down these offenders. And I want to make it clear, in the last week, 9 offenders have been charged with very serious offences in New South Wales. They will face the courts. They've been refused bail, and if you commit these offences, it may not be whilst you commit the offence, but New South Wales Police have shown via their track record that they will track you down and you'll be charged with these serious offences.
What do you mean by sophisticated actors? Are you suggesting that that's due to the element of planning involved, that there might be a foreign interference element?
No, I mean, it's important people don't read or extrapolate from what I've said, other than to say in some cases sophisticated tactics have been used.
Remy, we've had, noting that there was an attack yesterday, we've had high-profile arrests this morning, someone before the courts yesterday, someone charged with a 10-month sentence yesterday for the incident in Brewery. How are you becoming more confident that the state is turning a corner as part of this crisis? And 10-month sentence happened yesterday. What sort of message does that show to anyone thinking of doing?
Can I just say the wrong message? I mean, the person who's been charged with that offence, that carries a 10-year jail sentence, and the individual was handed a 10-month sentence. So I can tell you all today, New South Wales Police are appealing that sentence. We need to send a strong and unambiguous message that you will face the full force of the law, and we expect and we hope that when police do the job of arresting these individuals and putting them before the courts, significant sentences are handed down. How else can we send a message to potential alleged offenders that this will not be tolerated, and also send an unambiguous message to the community that we've got your back, and if people commit hate crimes, the full force of the book will be thrown at them. Yes.
How many calls are you getting to Crime Stoppers? I know the other day you guys were quite firm about the image you had where you had a nice face. You were saying you weren't getting enough feedback about that. Is the community protecting these people who are going out and doing this? People know who they are. Are they coming forward and giving you the information you've been asking for?
Yeah, look, you'd appreciate that they're operational questions. What I can say is that there's been information that's handed to police and they're acting in relation to that Alibi incident. You'd appreciate that there's police operations that are taking place, and we can't offer a running commentary while that is underway, but we appreciate the community's feedback, information. New South Wales Police need it to do their job, but in relation to that matter, that has happened. Yes, sir.
Just a question for the Commissioner. The former president of the Jewish Board of Deputies, Leslie Burgess House, was targeted with anti-Semitic graffiti in Bellevue Hill just before Christmas. challenge with Chin's former house was also published over hides not long after. Is police looking for a connection possibly between both attacks, and could the perpetrator be the same person or person?
As I said before, we're not ruling anything out. We're keeping a very open mind based on the evidence and based on everything that we've got, and we'll continue to do to examine if that's an issue.
Police Commissioner, you finished. Sorry, cut off. Right. Just back on the foreign experience, given how big that statement was from the AP Commissioner yesterday, just to clarify, do you understand whether these foreign actors, is it state actors like a state overseas state, or is it individuals overseas?
As I said, I'll be meeting with the AFP Commissioner and other commissioners at 2 o'clock this afternoon to canvass those exact issues.
Is that something that has come up at all across foreign interference?
As I've said, we will examine all the evidence. The evidence we have so far has brought individuals to court, and those matters are before the court, and the matter that was dealt with yesterday. Those matters don't talk to the motivation necessarily. I understand the offender from yesterday plead guilty. That matter is dealt with without us understanding the motive behind it. We know that the actions occurred, but we may not always understand the motive, and that's why these investigations will remain ongoing. And that's why we rely on community information, because that goes to what's behind us.
Premier, if you apply changes to the law, when are those changes coming into place?
As soon as possible. I mean, the changes to protest laws to protect religious institutions across New South Wales should be in place when Parliament resumes. Changes to hate speech laws as soon as possible. We're drafting them at the moment. We're talking with our counterparts in Victoria. The law's already been changed in Western Australia and has been in place since 2004. So I'm hopeful sooner rather than later, but we want to make sure that we get it right. And I can't give you a date today other than to say that we're not twiddling our thumbs. Concurrent with this investigation and everything else the government's doing, my department and the Attorney General's department are drafting potential laws that we can introduce as soon as possible.
Just to change tack really quickly, on the unions, how confident are you that lawyers have gathered enough evidence of economic harm to defeat the union in the Fair Work Commission's case?
Yeah, look, I think we've got a strong case, but it's before the court, and I'm not going to prejudge them or suggest that they're going to make a decision one way or the other. What I can say is, with the exception of the electrical trades union, all the other unions have given an undertaking to the Commission that they won't re-lodge the bans that they've pursued that caused, a lot of widespread delays across the public transport network. So I don't know how the Commission will consider that, but obviously that's a breakthrough that we've been waiting for a long time.
So the IRC then, while we're staying on union stuff quickly, what's the latest with the IRC and the psychiatrists?
It's an expedited hearing. So we asked for that, and we're hopeful that we can get a pay agreement as adjudicated by the Industrial Relations Commission, but there's not a blank cheque. We're not going to hand a blank cheque over to the unions that are asking for it, and for the reasons that I've articulated for weeks now. I mean, a 25% pay increase for psychiatrists, given how much they earn, is the equivalent of $90,000 a year, just an increase in salary. Now that's the same as a first-year nurse earns. It's nearly what a first-year police officer earns. It's certainly more than a police cadet at the Goulburn Academy earns, and that's just an increase in pay. And I can't say to the rest of the public sector, 400,000 public servants, look, there's a limit to how much we can pay, but at the same time say to a couple of hundred psychiatrists, oh look, here's a blank cheque. It's just not right.
Pay aside, Premier, do they have an argument about the resourcing in our hospitals? Because of this, beds are being shut down as we speak. In West Sydney at RPA, they're going. It's already bad. How can you stand there and say that's acceptable and we just be ambulance at the bottom of the cliff while we wait for all this to play out?
Well, look, I'm not saying that, but what I have done since we've got into government is put enormous resources into health, in particular psychiatric care. Now, whether it's been the reform that the psychiatrists are demanding or not is something I can't speak to, but to suggest that the money's gone backwards or we've ripped money out or the allocation of funds to acute mental health care in the state has gone backwards, it's just not true. And I'm going to finish my answer. And my dialogue, or the government's dialogue with psychiatrists, has been specifically about their pay. And if we want to have a generalised discussion about reforming mental health care in New South Wales, I'm happy to do that. But thus far, our negotiations with them have been, look, I know that there's clinical nurses, and I know that there's counsellors, and I know that there's psychologists, but don't worry about them. Right now, let's just start with the 25% pay rise for us. Now, I think a reasonable person would say that as Premier of New South Wales and as a mental health minister and a health minister, we've got an obligation across the sector. Frankly, we'd blow all our money on that pay rise when everybody else in the public health system needs a hand up as well.
You know there aren't enough beds, Premier. You know that that the emergency rooms are already struggling. You know that. It's not just about pay. That's a really simplistic way of looking at the argument. Is it acceptable that at the moment the contingency plans are to lose more beds?
No, well, hang on a second. That's because of the resignations. I mean, is the argument that you're making to me, because you've suggested that we're just trying to be simplistic about it, that what we should do is hand that check over and all our problems will be solved?
No, the argument is about beds and losing beds in the short term.
Well, I want to make it clear that the last two budgets that we have brought down have increased the public health budget, particularly for mental health. Now, we will continue that. We know that that's important. We know that there's psychiatric care in our community is hugely needed. And we've done that in the last two budgets. But to suggest that, well, what we need to do now is put this specifically into a pay rise for psychiatrists, I mean, that will rob other parts of the public health budget.
Just on the hate speech laws proposed.
Yes.
Under the changes that you proposed, do you envision that if someone walks down the street wearing a t-shirt that has an anti-Jewish slogan, they get arrested and charged?
Yeah, look, I'm not going to speculate on potential charges, and the reason for that, and the reason for the changes to the law, is precisely for that purpose. It shouldn't be me as a private individual making a determination about whether someone's broken the law or not. We want to make sure that the authorities are in a position to do that. Now, that's not a huge world away from the current law as it stands in New South Wales, because vilification is not allowed in the state. It's just that it's a civil law application. What that means is an individual has to say, look, I believe that you're vilifying me, I believe that you're preaching hatred in our community, I'm going to bring effectively a private charge against you in the court under the criteria set down in the legislation. If we keep the criteria the same, but the state takes the care of the prosecution rather than an individual, well, that's a better system. I mean, that's a system they're pursuing in Victoria. It's been on the books in Western Australia since 2004. And the last point I want to make about this, and I think this is crucially important, yes, this has been driven by a completely unacceptable rise in anti-Semitic attacks in New South Wales. But it's very important to make the point that this will apply to everybody, across the board. Anyone who preaches hate in our community, who sets about dividing Australian against Australian and undermining what it means to live in Australia in 2025 will be subject to the laws.
What do you say, though, to the argument that by making it penal offence, it's actually going to be harder to prove this hateful conduct? And I guess what's your response to Catholic Church, Anglican Church, other religions, a lot of organisations warn against specifically this change for that reason?
Yeah, look, I mean, there's a mixed bag when it comes to individuals that have asked for the change. I mean, I think that I could be corrected on this, but I think that the teachers' unions were advocating for a change. The Jewish Board of Deputies was suggesting that there needs to be a change as well. There've been people levied against it who suggested that we shouldn't pursue the change. What I have been given comfort of when it comes to changes to the legislation is that they've been on the books since 2004 in Western Australia. There's been about 50 prosecutions, not overwhelming. It hasn't been scores every single year. But I do think it sends a message that it's not tolerated. It's just not tolerated. And I also think that violent activity in our community doesn't begin with someone waking up and pursuing a violent attack on a fellow Australian. I think it begins with hate speech.
Just a question on National Cabinet yesterday. Could you shed some more light on those discussions? The main outcome that we've heard about is this national database, but were there other initiatives that were on the table that perhaps weren't agreed to? What else was discussed?
Yeah, look, nothing was not agreed to. I mean, it's a pretty, not always, but it was a collegial meeting this time. What we did look at is across jurisdictions, where there's a law that could be applied, say in New South Wales or Victoria, and I mean, I spoke a little bit about it earlier, the hate speech laws. There are stronger and tougher laws on the books in Western Australia and Victoria that we can look at in New South Wales. And I think I should be looking at it because regrettably, and to my great regret, there's a rising number of anti-Semitic attacks in my state, in New South Wales. So I think that we should have the toughest laws, or at least equal toughest laws on the books, because we can't tolerate it.
Premier, on the National Cabinet, given it was a 90-minute meeting on Zoom, do you think the Prime Minister should call it earlier, even as early as coalition Jewish leaders on it months ago? But why didn't the Prime Minister call National Cabinet last week? Did he was too late calling it?
No, I mean, look, I think talking across jurisdictions is helpful, but I'll be honest with you, I think the most important conversations that are taking place involve the Commissioner for Police in New South Wales, the AFP Commissioner, intelligence agencies, security agencies. I mean, reasonable people would be wanting them talking, if not every day, every hour.
Were you disappointed that the main outcome was a national database? That's been criticised for not really doing anything tangible to solve this crisis.
Well, look, if that was the only thing we were doing or states were doing, yes, but clearly that's not the case.
Commissioner, if we can return to a few of the matters, just I'm curious about this arrest last night. The 33-year-old man who was initially taken to hospital, was he in an erratic or heightened state of
I can't go into anyone's health information, but suffice to say that at some point he was released and then subsequently charged, and now he's before the court today.
And just following to that, Maruga, we've got a situation there where you say you're confident about these, and forgive me if it's come out and I haven't noticed this, but the CCTV footage of this incident doesn't seem to be distributed through typical police media. Why is that?
There could be investigative reasons why. I certainly know yesterday that detectives were doing a grid search for CCTV, but I also know that there's volumes and volumes of it, and the first job of detectives is to go through that before we seek public assistance.
Commissioner, do you believe that your application is something to hatred should be equivalent?
I deal with the laws of the day, and that's a question for government. But certainly we use the laws available to us, and as you can see, we have a man before the court today.
Commissioner, just on that topic, 93Z over the last, if I'm correct in saying it's reported one successful conviction in, I think, 7 years. Do you think that, I know you deal with the laws of the day, given it's only amid heightened hate speech and an increase in anti-Semitic attacks, do you think the hate speech provision that has only registered one conviction is fit for purpose for you?
As I said, that's a question for government. It's certainly any complaint we get for 93Z, we investigate it, we seek legal advice on sufficiency, and where we have sufficient evidence, those matters are prosecuted. As you allude to, one conviction, and that's the decision for the court. But certainly I can assure the community, any complaint we get, we investigate and use the laws available.
Okay, thanks everybody. We better keep it.